Lovely. Are we live now?
Yes.
Lovely. Welcome everybody to this meeting of West Yorkshire Combined Authority on Thursday the 16th of April. We have everybody joining the meeting virtually this morning, and very pleased to be back, even if it is virtually, having meetings in public. So first of all, apologies for absence. I understand we have Councillor Pennington and Councillor Harrand.
And Councillor Jeffrey.
And Councillor Jeffrey, of course.
Yes.
I understand that Roger Marsh needs to leave at 12 o'clock, so we'll try and make sure that the business that he's involved with is done before that time. Can I ask people, when they're not speaking, to put themselves on mute, and then that just makes it easier for us to run the meeting. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests. Anybody? No, non-declared. Exempt information. There is an item at the end of the agenda which does require us to go off live and do that in private, because that's a private item which is confidential, so we need to make sure that that's done out public, but that's at the end of the agenda. I will read that out then. Minutes of the meeting of the Combined Authority held on 6th of February. Those have been circulated. Does everybody have any problems with those? Any comments or questions? No? Lovely. First of all, then, on the agenda we have, obviously since our last meeting, COVID-19 has made a major impact on the country and of course on the region. We all, as local authority leaders and members, have been doing huge amounts to support our communities through this very, very difficult time. It has been hugely upsetting and distressing for a lot of people, and is directly impacting everyday lives. And of course, there are people in hospital who are ill, very ill, and that is concerning for families, friends, and all of us. In the meantime, obviously, we're and local authorities are doing our rescue and recovery plans, but the Combined Authority also has a role to play in that, particularly on the economic recovery side. We have Brian Archer here to present on COVID-19. Brian, is that Brian starting that first, or is Ben going to do something on that first as an introduction?
I'm happy to start, Chairman, if that's okay. Just to give members some headline data in terms of the strategic context and the scale of the challenge that we face in the region. The Leeds City region had 1,900 business liquidations in March, which was up 66%. And we've estimated there's around 240,000 jobs at risk in the region. 2/3 of our businesses on the patch have furloughed staff, and just over 1/3 of businesses have less than 3 months cash reserves. So it's a really pressing issue for our businesses at the moment, getting access to finance and cash. Now, members will be aware that the government launched the Civil Loan Scheme, where loans are underwritten by up to 80% by the government. But as of last week, there were 300,000 loan applications that went in and only 4,200 loans that were approved, which was just under 1.5%. That has changed as of this morning. 1.1 billion has been lent to businesses across the country, to 6,000 firms, but that's still only 20% of firms receiving a loan having gone through the process, so 80% are still struggling to access the finance. So what have we done about it? Well, we've had 3 meetings with the banks and the LEP chairman and the CBI and other business-led bodies to discuss with the banks what they can do to expedite the process, and also to identify any particular gaps in funding support. The outcome of those meetings will be a letter that's going to the Chancellor today to request some additional grant support for micro businesses as they come out of the end of the furlough scheme. At a local level, we're offering grants to support businesses through the current crisis. A recent example of that was Arida Healthcare, who are a supplier to the NHS. They've delivered 12,000 critical care beds for the new Nightingale hospitals, and 50% of the grant support that the Combined Authority gave them has already been repaid, and they've created just over 12 jobs as a result. We're also working with other suppliers in terms of the manufacture of components for ventilators, and matching suppliers of PPE with the economic buyers, both in the NHS and the health and social care sector. So a lot of work going in terms of helping businesses with the supply chain. We're also in discussions with Yorkshire Purchasing Organisation to see how we can streamline that process and make it quicker to get PPE to the front line. In terms of the workforce, what we've been doing on the workforce, obviously we've got the employment hub. So businesses that are looking to make redundancies, we're able to offer support by referring staff to opportunities that are available, whether that's retraining or other job opportunities. I'd like to make members aware there's two critical dates that are coming up at the moment. The first one is the 20th of April, which is when HMRC will make the first payments to businesses for the job retention scheme. Still desperately in need of cash. And the second critical day is the 18th of April, when redundancy notices will have to be issued under the 45-day redundancy consultation rules, unless the job retention scheme can be extended beyond May. So there's a lot of pressure on government from business-led bodies to extend the job retention scheme beyond May. Other activities that we're doing at a local level is key account management of the larger organisations across the piece, working with them on the supply chains, and also expanding the business support gateway and helpline. We've got a number of new products and services that we've introduced, particularly online services such as webinars for crisis planning, mental health support, and such like. And we've also got a successful volunteer mentoring scheme. We're able to offer online coaching for our businesses across the piece as well. So that's essentially what we're doing at the moment. We're also in the middle of implementing a response and recovery plan. And some of that will start to detail how we get into recovery and how we stagger that recovery. Obviously, some sectors will recover quicker than others, and the timing of that's really important. We have 6 work streams underway at the moment. Governance, making sure we've got accurate data and intelligence, and that we're able to ensure that all our policy decisions are evidence-based. The business support offer has been revised and refreshed to obviously optimise business survival and recovery. We're also leading a work stream on employment and skills to make sure that we're in a good position to redeploy and retrain the displaced labour. And then the teams are modelling recovery scenarios, again, shaping the policy responses as we start to move into recovery. And then finally, we've got a communications and marketing work stream. Again, it's really important that we get those consistent messages out there. I'll stop at that, Chairman, if I may.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. So first of all, I'd just like to say thank you very much to the staff who've been working on that frontline business support hotline as well, and it has been hot. I know staff have been working all over the weekend taking those calls, and have been redeployed from other areas of the Combined Authority to do that work, and it is proving very valuable to make sure we provide that support for businesses in their hour of need, so thank you. Obviously some very worrying stats in that. Just thinking of the banks, I know Roger Marsh, as chair of the LEP, has been involved in conversations with the banks. It doesn't sound like those figures are very promising. Roger, what's your experience been so far?
Just grappling with the technology. Thank you, Susan. I'll address that point if I may in a moment, but just to reinforce Brian's comment, it's actually a note that's going to the Chancellor directly later today. It's already on its way, and it's going to seek to address the micro end of our market, which is quite significant, but also this issue of the timetable for not only the payment of those already furloughed, but perhaps consideration very quickly of extension of furloughing so that we don't have a whole range of consultations unnecessarily started. Secondly, I should add to colleagues that it is important as part of the recovery that we have the workforce to enable recovery to take place, and that independent training providers as well as RFE colleges get the funding that's already been approved in the budget that was recently announced to carry on their work, something that DFE is currently withholding funds, which is against Cabinet Office principles. And again, that's been put on the agenda of senior people within the government to address that. Coming back to the banks, I think there is a challenge of volume. There is a challenge of businesses being ready with the information on the one hand, but on the other hand, there's no excuse for not actually progressing this at some pace. And for me, a £330 billion package of all things that has only brought forward £1 billion of actual funding to date, I think tells its own story. But we are trying to work in this collaborative, cooperative and a cohesive way across the wider economy of Yorkshire and Humber, but also in my role as NP11, so that we are joined up to try and get a cohesion of the key messages and then hopefully get rapid responses. And I think that's all I need to say at this juncture, Chair.
Thank you, Roger. Could I just bring in Councillor Groves on the buses particularly, and our response on the bus changes? Impact on public transport. Councillor Groves, can you unmute yourself there?
Peggy Haywood.
There we go.
Join the meeting.
Yes, Councillor Groves.
Right, thank you, Chair. Since the lockdown, the government advised us, because the bus patronage fell pretty rapidly and it's down now 90%. The sudden reduction in numbers obviously caused financial significant challenges for the operators. So the DfT wrote to us and asked us to continue to pay bus and coach operators attended services and homeschool services as before the downturn. We are also paying concessionary fares, and so we're working really closely with the operators. We've managed to shape the network to meet key workers' needs, and we continue to change that on a weekly basis as and when that's needed. We're also working with to provide transport for the Nightingale Hospital, and we're planning going forward what the recovery will look like for bus users. Obviously, there's we have usually over 300 million journeys across West Yorkshire, so it's really crucial that we get transport up and running as soon as possible when the economy starts to move again. So we're working closely with the operators, and unfortunately, one operator has ceased trading, and we continue.
John Pennington. Join the meeting.
And we continue to plan, but there is a risk in terms of the finances of the combined authority. As you know, we do have revenue and costs to meet, so we constantly Councillor Blake is actually speaking to government on our behalf, so I don't know if she wants to come in at this point.
Yes, Councillor Blake, with your National Transport Lead hat on, would you like to just come in on that?
Yes, I just want to start by thanking everyone for the incredible work that they're doing in these unprecedented times. And as Councillor Groves has said, the transport sector is one of those that's been really hit with the loss of patronage, but I think incredible amounts of work being done to keep at least a skeleton service running. So I've been in dialogue with Baroness Veer, who has responsibility for the buses in this scenario, and they did respond by giving support to the bus companies to support their franchises. I've made the point very forcibly, as you would expect me to, that it isn't just the bus companies who are losing income, and obviously the combined authority still has to put revenue in. So we've made a very strong case and continue to lobby together with other combined authorities around the country to make sure that we're not forgotten when it comes to compensation of the costs that we're incurring as a direct result of the COVID-19 situation. We haven't had a response recently, so I think perhaps it could be timely for us to chase that up to make sure that we aren't forgotten in the compensation package that we're negotiating across the whole of the public sector, local government, but combined authorities. Obviously, we have a very key role in enabling the recovery when it comes. Obviously, this isn't just restricted to buses, but there are real concerns from the rail providers as well. Obviously, we're in a position of provider of last resort with Northern, but there are real concerns that the market just isn't going to return quickly to anywhere near the position it was in, and we need to have a very close eye on the impact right across the system.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. So clearly, obviously, transport is one of the key sectors to be hit immediately and very hard. Dave Pearson, obviously, did you want to add anything to what Councillor Blake and Councillor Doe's also be very active on this agenda? Anything?
I think just to make members aware, as Councillor Groves and Councillor Blake have said, is that the recovery for public transport is going to be quite difficult in the sense that the patronage that the network enjoyed prior to the pandemic is not just going to materialise overnight again. It'll be slow to develop, and we as combined authority will need to work very closely with both the bus and the rail sectors to help build it up. Social distancing will be an impact as well on public transport use in the recovery period as well. So we'll need to work with government on how that will actually work in the context of public transport. So quite a lot of activity that the combined authority will need to, and consideration the combined authority will need to give to bringing public transport back into the new economy that emerges from the pandemic.
Thank you. So obviously we've covered business support and transport. We also need to think about going forward how we rebuild our economy for jobs, don't we? I know Brian mentioned jobs there and employment within his opening remarks, but skills, obviously, skills lead, you expect me to say that, wouldn't you? But skills and retraining people is going to be very important if people are going to continue in jobs and getting good jobs as well. So there's a whole lot of work for us all to do here as leaders of the region on recovery. And Ben, obviously we've already talked offline about how we're going to harness that effort of us across the region. Do you want to just come in on that and just say what we're going to do next on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can do. I think there's a number of work streams that we're looking to put in place, and we will share a note round combined authority members as these proposals are worked up. But I think a couple of things to say. The first is that we're looking to convene a working group of the combined authority to focus on the economic recovery coordination and look to put that in place fairly rapidly, and to involve wider partners as well, including business representative groups, key industry figures, and others. The next thing is that we've already begun circulating amongst members kind of up-to-date business information, as you'll have heard Brian and Roger talk about, and we'll continue to do that. With particular focus on recovery, we need to think about the scenarios of that for that recovery, and the different ways that both the lockdown may be removed, and what that will mean in terms of the way that the economy and business and indeed workers will respond, and how we can move as quickly as possible to support that. The third thing is we need to consider how recovery fits with the existing draft local industrial strategy, and how the objectives in there around low carbon economy, high levels of innovation and productivity, and how they can be taken forward at the same time as helping businesses and recover from this situation.
And then we also then need that then needs to translate into a set of revised programs and business support and employment products, which we'll need to both work with central government to secure the funding for, and consider how our existing funding streams can be further flexed. So a number of work streams, Chair, that all need to be taken forward in short order, based around creating this task and finish group to oversee and coordinate the work.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, at the moment, we're still in the midst of it, in the heat of this activity to support our communities through this very difficult period. But I do think, and I think everybody shares this view, that we need to think about recovery now as well, because what we can't have is coming out of this at the other side, then having to wait another 3 months while I put recovery plans in place. So I know it's hard at this moment when everybody's got so much on, but we need to do the two things in parallel to make sure that coming out of this, our economy can be kick-started, and we're on top of the situation as quickly as possible. So if officers can accelerate that work, we'd be very grateful. Brian, I think briefly.
Briefly, just picking up on Ben's point about refreshing the industrial strategy to reflect the new landscape. When there's a significant economic downturn, there's always an increase in new business formation rates. So I think there's a great opportunity for us. And at the moment in the industrial strategy, there's no reference to business startup in any of the industrial strategies. And yet there's a massive opportunity because we're going to have some highly skilled people entering the labour market, and a great opportunity to replenish the business stock for some of the businesses that we're going to lose through this process. And I think that's obviously an essential element in our recovery strategy.
Yes, so obviously supporting businesses of all sizes is important. Obviously, it's difficult to talk about opportunity at a time when people are losing their jobs. So I think obviously there's some support to existing businesses as much as we can, as well as supporting new ones. And it's making sure we have a package of support for all those levels, isn't it? And that is difficult. Yeah. Because with lots of different people and lots of different sizes of businesses, it's difficult getting a package that fits all. But that is the ambition that we have. Roger?
Yeah, just very quickly to Brian's point, the members will remember the work we're doing with MIT REAP on creating an innovation-driven entrepreneurial economy. It may be very prescient, the work we've done over the last 2 years and how we might apply it as part of that recovery and renewal for our economy. I just share that thought just to remind people rather than engage in discussion, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So obviously that paper was for noting, and that conversation for noting. It is something that is obviously at the top of our minds, all of us at the moment. Our next meeting obviously should continue that discussion and make sure that we have that as top of the agenda at every meeting at the current time, I would suggest. Anybody, any more comments or questions before we move on? No, I'm not seeing indications. So in that case, thank you very much for that. And we've got a few actions out of that we need to pursue. And obviously we're all working on it full time alongside that. Councillor John Pennington has just joined the meeting by telephone. So welcome, Councillor Pennington. We're now going to move on to the next item of the agenda, the business items on the agenda. If it's okay with people, I'd suggest that we move item 7 on capital approvals up to before 6, because I'm just mindful that Roger Marsh needs to leave the meeting at 12, and Councillor Jeffries unfortunately wasn't able to join this call. So we're relying on Roger to give us an update on capital approvals. Is everybody happy for us to do that? I'm not seeing any dissent. I'm seeing assent. Thank you very much. Capital approvals. Roger, would you be able to move on to that item now and present to us?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for accommodating the change so that I can go on to another call at just after 12. The papers, pages 45 onwards, record the 2 schemes we seek the Combined Authorities approval for today. They're both transport schemes, one of which, Normanton Railway Station car park extension, has been through the investment committee, and as I said, the detail are in the papers. If anybody wanted to ask any detailed questions, I am standing in for Councillor Jeffrey. Dave Haskins is on the line, will be able to do so. And the second scheme, which would have been through the investment committee on the 2nd of April, but for obviously the circumstances we find ourselves in, is part of the A650 Newton Bar roundabout at Wakefield. It's part of a bigger bigger scheme, part of the phase 1 of the corridor improvement programme as part of the West Yorkshire Strategic Highway Network. And again, the details of those schemes are in the paperwork, and I'm not, for brevity, I'm not going to go through the detail unless there are specific questions. The ask of the combined authority is to allow these schemes to proceed, and as part of that, to approve further funding of 2.337 million to enable these things to carry on. I think I'll pause there, Chair, just to take any specific questions on either of these schemes that members may like to make before I move the recommendation for approval. So I'll pause there.
Thank you, Roger. I'm not seeing anybody indicating at the moment. I mean, obviously, it's very important with these capital projects that we continue the work of approving them and getting them moved on, because again, when we come out of this, that economic activity is something we're going to be relying on to boost jobs around the region as well. So I personally am very keen to get on with any capital programs we've got able to. So Roger, I'm not seeing anybody indicating, so did you want to move?
Yeah, before I move the recommendation for those two, if I could also just bring members' attention to para 4.4 on page 50 of the papers regarding a change request, which through the delegated authority, the delegation to the investment committee, that's already been approved, just so that people are aware of that. So having said that, could I move the recommendation and take members' thoughts on those two schemes, and hopefully we can have unanimous approval. Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'll put my hand up like that, so saying yes. Can we people vote? Can we all do that? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think people are doing that. That's lovely. Thank you very much. So that has approval. Thank you very much, Roger, for that. Yes, great that we can get on with those projects and make sure that we keep them moving so that we can start generating activity once we're able to. So with that is passed and carried. Now, can we move back to the item number 6, which was on devolution? This is something that obviously all leaders and councillors across Yorkshire, in fact, have been involved in for some time. We've now got a deal for West Yorkshire, which we're working up. There is a timetable to go through and lots of work to be done to make sure we're able to achieve devolution by the deadline. And of course, the significant monies that come with it, because that is also going to help with our recovery, let's face it. So there's significant investment, including transforming cities, which I know Councillor Groves has been working on for some time. So Ben, did you want to start on this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to. So this it seems a lifetime ago, actually, in the budget statement, where the minded to deal in principle was agreed between West Yorkshire leaders and the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. This paper is a template paper similar to the ones that have already been approved by each constituent member of the combined authority, in effect endorsing the deal and setting out the detail of the minded to agreement that's been reached, and then beginning the process of enacting the deal, in particular by commissioning a review of the governance arrangements and the creation of the scheme, which are the set of instructions the government would then follow to put in place the mayoral order. So the paper on page, just let me turn to it, on page 35, sets out a number of recommendations about endorsing the deal and commissioning the governance scheme and review.
Thank you very much for that. And just to make the point that obviously we want to continue the close working relationship we have with York, who I know is...
Join the meeting.
is with us. Oh, Councillor Pennington's in live now. Excellent. With York, obviously, is an important partner for us. So getting that committee between West Yorkshire and North Yorkshire strengthened is a priority for us as well at this time, can I say? Obviously, Harrogate and Craven and Selby have all made representations to that end as well. So can we just have some reassurance that that work is progressing, Ben?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Good. And what time scale can we expect to see something on that joint committee then underneath the two LEPs?
So, well, I'll defer to colleagues, in particular Angela and Caroline, on the detail. But I think, as you say, the discussions are already ongoing, or were ongoing, between North Yorkshire authorities and the government about their own deal. We'd obviously want to make sure that whatever arrangements we put in place work for both those arrangements and for both local enterprise partnerships. So I would say that dialogue is continuing, and we will look to have bring you back something in place over the course of the summer.
That's good. Thank you very much. So any more questions or comments? There's quite a few recommendations on this paper, including also getting on with the timetable and getting through our constituent councils. Obviously, there are challenges with that at the moment, and we'll be looking through executive decision making to enact that. Any more questions, comments?
Can I come in if you're receiving me?
Fine. I've got Councillor Aspen, then Councillor Hall, then Councillor Pennington.
Thank you, Chair. Just to take the opportunity to wish you all well with the West Yorkshire deal, and really to note how pleased that I am that York can continue that relationship with the combined authority and also with the LEP and our involvement in those structures. So thank you for that, and obviously we'll take as active a part as possible. And I think that last report actually on COVID-19 shows us why that work across boundaries, particularly on economic development, is going to be more important now than ever, as well as things like transforming cities and the previous transport fund. So we'll welcome all of that and do whatever we can. And then just to pick up the chair's point, I know that Selby, Craven, Harrogate and ourselves are particularly keen to get those joint committee workings in place, and obviously look to make sure that we can work across that area as closely as possible. So I will go back as a result of this call and give a nudge to our LEP, and I know that the local authority leaders in all of those areas are very keen for that to be put in place as soon as possible. Just on your paper itself, two things I should mention is that we did still have, this is the York and North Yorkshire leaders, a call with Simon Clark, the local government minister, who said that he did still want work with civil servants and our officers to continue to work out what that York and North Yorkshire deal might look like, including the relationships across to West Yorkshire. So work will be ongoing. But I was particularly pleased to see in your paper the support that you'd managed to secure for work at the Yorkshire leaders level. So thank you for getting that from the government, and it's certainly something I'll be keen to replicate in any York and North Yorkshire proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. On that, actually, Councillor Blake, would you want to come on the Yorkshire Leaders Board?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for mentioning that, Keith. We felt it was very important to honour the commitment that we made at the Yorkshire Leaders Board when we, obviously made the decision to move forward at a West Yorkshire level. It doesn't mean that we're walking away from our Yorkshire colleagues at all. And indeed, I think as events have unfolded, I think it's going to become clear that working at the Yorkshire level on so many areas, going through the recovery and really looking at how we really boost inward investment going forward, and all of those areas is going to be absolutely critical. So just to make it clear, we've got £250,000 to help us set up the necessary administrative arrangements and to start looking at areas of work that we can collaborate on together. So very important moment for us, and looking forward to taking that work forward and continuing to work with our colleagues right across the region, but of course, particularly in this context with our wider LEP colleagues from York and the districts. So thank you for your continued support, and look forward to seeing how the Joint Committee takes shape and enables us to move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Councillor Hall.
Thank you. Yes, there are two things that I noted from the report. The first thing is that the timescales are extremely tight to get anything through whatever the combined authority may have to pass, and the councils, and then on to Parliament to lay legislation. The second thing, though, is that it's a very broad and very strategic document, which has a lot of references in it to things which we don't exactly know a lot about yet. Things like precepts, some of the things, housing, planning powers, strategic infrastructure tariff, this kind of thing. When will we get the opportunity as combined authority members perhaps to drill down to some of these in greater detail and to form some opinions on what these may actually look like once we present them to the Secretary of State?
I mean, I think, of course, briefings can be done with any member of the combined authority, and it perhaps be an opportunity, Councillor Hall, for you to have a one-to-one with Alan Rees, perhaps, if we can organise that, so you can go some of those questions in more detail. I don't think the powers that we're getting in West Yorkshire are any different to those in other mayoral combined authorities, so there's nothing exceptional about the powers that we're drawing down or indeed pooling at this level. But Ben, do you want to come back in on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to respond to Councillor Hall's points, I think on timetable, the timetable as agreed is set out on page 31. I think we would agree that it is a fairly demanding timetable, and that's been exacerbated by the current pandemic. And so we're currently in the process of looking at how, in particular, the consultation phase might need to be adapted so that we can still have a meaningful consultation in the current environment. And part of that is about engaging with government on whether their part of the process can be done at a faster pace. I think the challenge, though, is to get all the necessary pieces in place in time for an election next May. So on the point about drilling into the detail, I think, as Councillor Hinchcliffe says, we'd be more than happy to share with you all the information that we have on any topic, and we could do that through offline briefings and discussions. But also, as Councillor Hinchcliffe says, this is a pretty standard package of measures insofar as other places have already got them, and there isn't, it's fair to say, a large amount of detail that hasn't already been shared.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Pennington.
Thank you. We don't we all look good this morning? Even Juliet's got some makeup on, I see. So here we go. More seriously,
I see your advertising behind you there, Councillor Pennington.
Quite right, quite right as well. Yes. No, not much red on there, I'm afraid, but there we go. Just to come to bordering on Councillor Hall's comments there, I think we need more information. Needs explanation. This strategic infrastructure tariff, I presume that means we're going to charge people for digging holes in the road. But then we go on a little bit further on to page 30, and we're on about setting a levy. Have we any idea of what it's going to be based on and what value it's going to be? Those would be my questions. It concerns me a bit that if we get a superb, dynamic mayor, he can then be overruled by the committee that's set up. And I am just questioning why I think the mayor should take on the PCC role, but I don't know why we've not got fire and rescue under that umbrella as well.
Thank you. Ben, would you like, I mean, I think Councillor Blake probably wants to make a point of order. Councillor Blake?
I'd just like to say it would never occur to me to comment on John's makeup on a call like this.
Ben's, all Ben's.
can I pull him up? The role of mayor is not just limited to the male in our species.
Thank you for that point of clarification, Councillor Blake. Ben?
Yeah, just to comment on the points around the infrastructure tariff and the levy. I think it's important to understand at this stage that these are enabling powers that the mayor would have available. There hasn't been any detail worked up as to how, not so much how they would work, but what any amounts would be, and the relationship between the mayor and the combined authority is set up with specific checks and balances to make sure that all parties agree to any levies or tariffs that are brought in. So I think at this point they're enabling powers. They're there for the MCA should it choose to use them, but any proposals to use them would require much more detailed papers and debate from the combined authority.
Lovely. Is that Councillor Pandora? Yes, Councillor Pandora.
Yeah. Just my understanding while we were in discussion was that some of the powers that are there will be there, but not necessarily exercised. And for example, with the precept, from my understanding, with the combined authorities, they've not put a precept on the constituent authorities. And even if that happened, right, yeah, there'd be another process to go through in terms of what that means. Is that correct?
Ben, would you like to answer that?
Yes, that's correct. I probably wasn't being clear, sufficiently clear in my last answer, but yes, these any of these enabling powers would require further approvals by the combined authority.
Lovely, thank you. Oh, Councillor Galton, I just saw you indicating there.
Thanks, Chair. All I will say is I think we're going to have to be very patient over the period that we have to get this to legislation around these questions. It's a really good problem to have that we have these tensions to discuss. And I think we should really be celebrating the fact that we have got some forward momentum. And I think the council leaders within West Yorkshire need congratulating that they've actually got the government to commit to this. And I look forward to that debate as we go through this consultation period. And perhaps one of the advantages of the current COVID-19 restrictions is that also the people of West Yorkshire might also have the space to participate in that discussion as well.
Absolutely. So we need to use all the media methods at our disposal, don't we, to make sure we consult widely on this, and that obviously includes online. And I understand that other combined authorities, even outside an epidemic, when they were coming to fruition as a mayoral combined authority, also relied on online consultation quite heavily, Ben?
That's true. Predominantly it was through digital channels, and as I said, we'll be looking at where there were leaflets left at libraries and other public places, how we would provide alternative and adequate channels during the time of the current pandemic.
Good. Okay, thank you. Well, with that, I can't see anybody else indicating. So obviously there's some quite detailed recommendations in the paper. Can I propose that we accept those recommendations? All those in favour, please show. Lovely, thank you very much. That is carried. So please proceed with that work. As we've outlined, obviously it becomes even more important now because it comes with significant levels of funding, which we are going to need every penny of in the recovery that we are going to have to steer here on in. So I would like officers to get on with that as quickly as possible. So moving on now to, I believe, governance arrangements. There's a paper there, which I'm just trying to toggle to as the parlance goes, about making sure that we have the right governance arrangements in place. I'll just open that. So we've got Caroline, who has authored this paper, and we have something on the advisory panels there to look at. making sure that we make appropriate arrangements during the pandemic. And also there's a switch in the private sector arrangements, because obviously Roger on the LEP has recruited new members, and I note here that Mark Roberts is a new LEP board deputy chair, who's obviously been very able on the LEP until now, so I really welcome that suggestion. Caroline, did you want to comment on this paper a bit further?
Just very briefly, Chair, you've clarified the three aspects of that. In terms of the new arrangements for combined authority and its committees, in terms of how we hold our meetings, new regulations came out earlier this month to enable local authorities and combined authorities to conduct meetings remotely. This is our first formal meeting which is held under those new arrangements, and it is our proposal for all future meetings of the CA, its committees and its panels during the pandemic to go forward in a virtual means, recognising the government guidance around social distancing. The paper you have in front of you to close out the formalities around this has attached to it as Appendix 1 an interim addendum to our standing orders, making clear what revisions there are to our formal standing orders for holding meetings whilst we do that virtually, and that relates very clearly to the regulations themselves. And attached to that document is a protocol which sets out the practicalities as to how we would try and do these meetings virtually. That is a guidance document for members of the meeting and for the chair to try and address the tricky issues that might come around from holding a meeting remotely rather than in the room. So that's the first part of the report. The second part puts forward some recommendations from the LEP board for extensions to existing private sector members on our advisory panels, and for some new members which have been proposed by the LEP board as a result of a recruitment exercise and an interview process which was conducted during February and March, and the details of that are in Appendix 2. And as you've said, Chair, there is a proposal for
join the meeting.
A new substitute member for the LEP chair, which is Mark Roberts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Roger, did you want to comment on that? Because obviously it does affect your board.
I think just one of my other remarks, and for the benefit of Councillor Pennington, the fact that in our annual review we were marked excellent, which is the highest category for governance. This continues that approach, and I'm particularly delighted not only with all the new people that are going to join the panels subject to the combined authorities approval, that we do have a board that is fully compliant in that it is 2/3, 1/3 private public sector, but importantly to me personally, the diversity of our economy as well as ethnicity, but also that we have a 50-50 gender balance, which is a government requirement for the future, not for now. So we're ahead of the game, and the further strengthening of the panels, I believe, will help in our work in these challenging circumstances that we find ourselves. And we were lucky, and not everywhere is lucky, to have such a range of people to choose from. So obviously all of this comes with my personal support. So whatever that's worth to members, I've been involved in most of this recruitment, and I believe we have the strongest team than we've had hitherto.
Thank you very much, Roger. So any questions or comments? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, and thank you, Roger, for that, for those words, because it's not only helpful, but it's vital that we know that these people all come with your backing, because we wouldn't want anything that's excellent to be anything less than excellent.
Exceptional.
Exceptional, that's right, exceptional, but I'm sure excellent as well. And of course, we don't know the people personally that are being put forward. So with your assurances, I'm very happy to support that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any more questions or comments?
Just a comment, if I may. I wasn't really referring to the I was referring to the 5 leaders on the main board, as it were, who would be voting on with the mayor on devolution going forward.
Yeah, this paper obviously is about the new governance arrangements for the LEP and the combined authority as at the moment. So this doesn't really strain to the mayoral combined authority. elements yet, but obviously I think Councillor Pennington, it would be useful, as we said in the previous discussion, for yourself and Councillor Hall to have a one-to-one with Alan, actually, who's in the real detail of all this, so that you can have some opportunity to question and challenge and just get under some of that detail. Is that okay, Alan? Can I ask you to do that?
Yes, of course, very happy to.
Is that okay, Councillor Pennington?
Yep, thank you.
Lovely. So with that, there's some clear 3 recommendations there on that governance paper. Can I move that we accept those? Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you very much.
Chair,
yes.
might I just give my apologies to colleagues to come off the meeting, and with from darkest round day, all best wishes for everybody keeping safe and well, and hopefully enjoying some sunshine. So I'm off now, and thank you for all your help. Bye bye.
Thank you, Roger. In fact, that's probably good timing, because I think we're now coming to the private elements of the agenda. Are we there, Ruth? I think that was a yes from Ruth.
Yes, we are. Yes. So we just need the directors, other than Angela, to leave, and Caroline needs to leave. The members of the committee can stay, obviously, and we'll be letting in Heather Waddington and a team. And I believe Peggy Haywood has arrived now, so she'll be joining as well.
Thank you. Do I have to read out this exemption information? Number 3, resolve that in accordance with.
No, Chair, I think it's simply if the committee if the CA is satisfied that we should go into private session now, that can be recorded.
So are people happy that we move into private session? Please raise your hand. Thank you very much. That is carried. So if anybody can now leave the meeting who's not meant to be on it, and Khalid, I think, is going to stop the recording, and then we accept the officers into the meeting to discuss.